look back at your childhood. What was your first Pokemon game? Was it Fire Red, Emerald, Black and White, or was it X and Y and beyond? Mine was Diamond, and back then life was pretty simple. It was pretty good. Go to school, play with my friends, do my homework, open my DS, play Pokemon, rinse and repeat. You know, back then I had daydreams of owning my own Turtwig or befriending a Jolteon. But I realized, when I played the newer Pokemon games, why do I not feel that same warmth for the Pokemon designs? Is it just me getting older and having more responsibilities? Probably. But it's also a lot deeper than that. Let me tell you why 3D Pokemon was a mistake. But first off, let me tell you about the background of this change in the first place. Put yourself in the shoes of a child who is yet to play a single Pokemon game. What would you see first? Personally, if I was that child, I would take a look at the Pokemon's design first and foremost. Is it cute? Is it scary? Is it dangerous looking? Is it badass? Design is a very important aspect to anything, especially video games. And Pokemon is no exception. So get this, the year was 2010. Gamefreak just launched a highly successful mainline Pokemon game that gained mass popularity, netting them a ton of profits. That game was Pokemon Black and White. Since 1996, Gamefreak and its daughter company Pokemon CG Studio, which makes all the Pokemon assets while Gamefreak makes the overworld assets, has been using similar formulas for their Pokemon games. That is, small-sized characters, movement limited to 90-degree angles, and most importantly, 2 versions, forwards and backwards, of all their Pokemon designs. Similar formulas, that is, until October 12 of 2013. 17 years they've been using that formula. 17 years! Like any other company, Gamefreak wanted each following predecessor to be an improvement from the last. If you observe closely, each mainline game utilized some sort of improvement. Common examples being the jump from this word, the colors, or the example that I'll be using for the rest of this video, animated sprites introduced in Gen 5. So when Pokemon planned to release their 6th mainline game, they already went 5 generations with 2D sprites. That's a whopping 649 Pokemon, by the way. And like any other sane company, like I mentioned before, Gamefreak also wanted to see improvements. But here comes the kicker. What happens when you have fully innovated one aspect of a game? I mean, what choice does Gamefreak have once it is fully committed to the animated sprites in Gen 5? Like, what could be next? Well, you see, that improvement jump was inevitable. The improvement jump from one gen to the next gen, the past into the future, the same formula into a slightly different formula, or in Pokemon's case, the change of never going back. I am, of course, talking about the jump to 3D. You see, 3D was a natural step forward that was controversial but necessary. If they didn't step upon these forbidden grounds, they would literally not evolve as a company. They'd be stuck at a stage that they cannot improve. Now, if I was the owner of a company and I just invested a truckload of money into the animations of 721 Pokemon at the time, you can bet that I'd want to reuse that into my future games. They future-proofed it, if you will. And that's actually a good strategy. It saves them a whole lot of money and time, and most other games also do this. Take Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, for example, or Final Fantasy VII Remake and its sequel, which I'm so hyped up to play, by the way. I mean, if I had to remake every single Pokemon from scratch for every new mainline game, that would just be burning away all my time and money, and that is not good. But you see, that creates a dilemma. If they don't turn to 3D, Gen 5 already had the max amount of innovation they could put into sprites, movement, so they'd really have nowhere else to innovate to. But if they do innovate to 3D, that'll just waste a lot of time, money, and effort if they don't reuse the assets. And reuse the assets they did. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said before, many other companies also do this. Doing so will allow Gamefreak to focus on other areas of the games that they make, like story improvement, concept creation, overworld asset upgrades, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, no matter the reason why they do that, fans are also customers. And customers, they'd want to see better quality games over time. I mean, there's obviously a steady improvement with the game so far, but some assets, such as Gyarados or Pikachu, have been literally the same since 2013. And mind you, it's been 10 years since then. You see the problem here? Because of that, you can't help but look at the good old simple days of 2D sprites. Heck, a Twitter user by the name of PKM Harmonia actually made art of Paldean Pokemon as 2D sprites. Look at this! And honestly, I really like them. It captures their personality well. And we'll get back to that later. Point is, even fans can make creative additions at this level. Imagine if, a professional studio would do the same, be it via 2D or even 3D. I mean, they have a lot of people to brainstorm with, right? You see, from all the improvements that Gamefreak made, it's missing one crucial aspect. How the Pokemon moves, the immersion with the player, their charm, and so on and so forth. That's exactly what they're missing. To put it into one word, they're missing personality. One thing that 3D Pokemon have over 2D Pokemon is that you can see them in their natural habitats, quote unquote. For me, it really adds to the immersion. I mean, look at Legends Arceus. The way they blended the Pokemon to the environment is absolutely genius. But that's not always the case. Look at Scarlet and Violet, or Sword and Shield, or the Gen 4 remakes. I don't know, to me, they don't really seem to fit with the gameplay and overall themes of the game. So, what happens if you take away the environment? You get these. So, after looking at that, what do you think was missing? To me, a lot of things needed to be added, but to summarize the countless points, I'll tell you what it was. Personality. That includes the poses, the colors, the shading, and all the shebang. Some Pokemon barely move at all in their 3D sprites, which I totally understand. Making 3D animations for countless Pokemon must be extremely expensive, but come on! Take a look at this beast of a Pokemon that is Typhlosion, who got massacred into this, sad-looking, overgrown hamster. For most of the 2D sprites, animation or not, they showed their personalities through their poses. It showed how serious the Pokemon is, how regal the Pokemon is, or how calming the Pokemon is. But take a look at all the same Pokemon, but in 3D. I don't know, it feels like they don't encompass the same feelings they invoke to us using the 2D versions. I'm not saying all 3D Pokemon are bad. I mean, in Scarlet and Violet, they even improved Charizard's animations to the point where I actually like it now. And without 3D Pokemon, we wouldn't have this. But enough about that. The point still stands. Most 3D models don't have that same personality that 2D sprites have. Let's take one example from Hippowdon. Let's take a look at this bad boy over here. Alright, we went from this menacing, scary, killing machine to this bored-looking, oversized fat cat. So Noma, tell me, what is this 3D design missing? Well, dear viewer, you couldn't have asked a better question. It's missing the 3 key components for a good Pokemon design: ambience, pose, and shading. For starters, in terms of ambience, the 2D design has cool looking sand that shows that it's not your regular run-of-the-mill hippo. It's a sand hippo. Second, look at its menacing pose, how it opens its mouth. Do you see the 3D model doing that? I don't think so. Finally, the shading. I can't really explain this to you because it requires me to do a heavy art style analysis and I'm way too lazy to do that. But the point is, I don't think I need to explain to you why this 3D is just lacking. Like, look at it. Any good Pokemon design would have all 3 of the qualities I mentioned before. ambience, pose, and shading, and this 3D has none. But don't get me wrong, there's still tons of actual good 3D models made by Gamefreak, and all in all, both 3D and 2D have their own, advantages and disadvantages. Overall, despite people's complaints, Pokemon's jump from 2D to 3D is actually a necessary one. That's because they've been striving for improvement since when the first game came out in 1996. 3D just, happened to be the next big step in their evolution as a company, with all the innovation for 2D sprites being already used, in addition to the fear of losing to its competitors who have far developed their games for the better, all of which are, also coincidentally in 3D. While many believe that Pokemon's 2D style was a signature vibe of Gamefreak, truth be told, it couldn't last forever, especially with other games improving alongside Pokemon. It was only a matter of time before Gamefreak also decided to jump ship to 3D. 2013 just, happened to be the year for that with Pokemon X and Y. While it is a high-risk maneuver to reuse the same assets for like 10 years and not change them, actually no, it's more than 10 years now, but as a company, reinvesting into a truckload of assets cannot be cheap. With all the artistry, coloring, and coding involved, it is really hard to do. So really, to an extent, Gamefreak was really at an impasse here because it also had to focus on other improvements from different aspects. Although Gamefreak could have benefited from putting more love and care into their Pokemon's animations and models, 3D also presented a new set of benefits and advantages, namely the easier integration into the environment and world building of the games that they're involved in. At the end of the day though, as outsiders, we could not have known exactly what Gamefreak was really thinking or what their actual plans were when they jumped to 3D. We don't know about their, financial situation, their organizational structure, and the rest of the shebang. You can only speculate as fans and customers. All in all though, both 3D and 2D models have their own advantages and disadvantages, depending on the circumstances involved. Hello, I'm Noma. I stream on YouTube. Please come check me out. I made this video while I'm sick, and I